All right, hello everyone. It is Tuesday, September 5th, and here we are starting out on week 2. You have finished your first round of assignments. You've submitted your compositions for week 1. And so we're going to start out today with a bit of peer review. And then we'll switch over to the rest of the material, starting a discussion of the new week's assignments. So, of course, we have a new round of assignments coming up for week 2. We will get into those, but of course, we always want to start out with some peer review from the previous week. So going forward, this is how our Tuesday sessions will work. We will start out with a discussion of the previous submissions, and then we will dive into the new assignments for the week. I have 5 submissions here for peer review. This is your composition from 2D Platformer. And hopefully after seeing this process one time, it will encourage more folks to submit and allow us to kind of discuss and go through your submissions. So everybody in the class will get individual feedback and grades, written feedback, but this allows me to kind of go into it a little bit more detail. And I think it's very good for the individual because, of course, I get to talk my way through your submission and point out certain things with everything set up in logic here. But it also is very beneficial for everybody else because you get to see different approaches to the project. So the more submissions that we have for any given assignment, the more there is to discuss and share. All right, so I'm going to start out with an overview of the assignment and the submissions, and then I'll go through each one of them individually, one by one. As you can see, if you did submit for the peer review, you'll see a track over here with your name, and each track is an individual student submission. So you'll see there's a total of 9 files on each one of the tracks, and you get to see how yours stack up against all the other ones. And we'll just be listening to it one at a time. So let me zoom in here a little bit. The way this is set up, well, let me actually zoom out just so we can see everything real quick. This column over here, these are all of the main loops. These are 8 bars long. These right here are the intro cues. Those are 2 bars long, and these over here are the ending cues. And they're only set up like this because this is how they alphabetically import. So we'll start over here with the main loops because that's going to give us the most information about what like the large majority of the composition, how the large majority of the composition will sound. And then we will get into the intros and endings which give us information about how it goes into and out of those main loops. All right, so starting over here with all of the main loops, first and foremost, the main loops are meant to loop. They are 8 bars long, and when they reach the end of any particular 8 bars, they should be able to return back to the top of that musical loop seamlessly, invisibly, and either be able to transition back to the top or jump to any of the other main loops seamlessly. So musically, harmonically, melodically, rhythmically, from the mix, all of these elements should be as invisible or seamless as possible as it is moving from the end of one particular cue into the beginning of the next cue. The main loops, between the 3 different main loops, there needs to be consistency in the instrumentation. So it's the same instruments, it's the same band playing the same song, but with 3 different variations on that theme. You need to have at least drums, bass, harmony, and melody, with a couple of layers for the harmony, especially to support that melody. You're probably going to have a strong lead line, a strong percussion pattern, and a bass line to support the harmonic progression. Then there should be slight changes. From the melodic lead, there will be a strong lead change from one to the next. So the instrument can stay the same, but the melodic lead line will vary and develop over the course of these 8 bars and from one cue to the next. You can have slight changes to the instrumentation. You can add and subtract stuff. You can the lead instrument can change, just as long as each one of the cues has a majority of the instrumentation to maintain consistency. So if one instrument steps forward to take a lead line, then at another time maybe it takes a step back and is still there as a harmonic instrument. Let's see, 8 bars long. They should be kind of upbeat and nothing too dark in tone or too serious overall. It's a lighthearted game. So we'll get a majority of the information of what the main loops are going to sound like, or what the composition is going to sound like from those main loops. Here are the intros. The intros are meant to build up into the main loops. You need to make sure that the end of any one intro will seamlessly transition into the beginning of any other main loop, as invisibly as possible. So that means consistent instrumentation from each one of the intros into each one of the main loops. Understand that the intro 1 does not always go to main loop 1, which does not always go to ending 1. You have intro 1, 2, and 3, main loop 1, 2, and 3, and ending 1, 2, and 3 that each have the possibility to transition into any of the other ones. So, and this becomes where most of the complexity of this composition is to make sure that all of the intros, main loops, and endings work against each other. So hopefully you've taken some time to listen to them in different combinations to see how they work and they sound. The intensity of the music by the end of an intro needs to be the same as the intensity that starts the main loop, so that there's not a real strong jump up or down as it transitions. And 3 ending cues. Number 1, these ending cues, they must end. They must reach silence. You don't want them to be cut off by the end of the file. You don't want any reverb or instrument decay or cymbal crash or anything to be cut off by the end of the file. They need to musically resolve whatever was going on in the main loop cues. The music needs to finish and resolve within 2 bars, and they need to reach silence, preferably within those 2 bars. But if you need a little bit of extra time for a decay or something to fade out, then you might give it a little bit of extra room beyond those 2 bars, as long as the music ends in 2 bars. All right, so let's take a look at the actual submissions here. Starting over here on the main loops. Again, these need to loop solidly with no pops or clicks. So these main loops seem to do okay. This main loop seems to have a gap at the end. So I don't think that's a rest or anything. It looks a little bit too long. So we'll have to pay attention to that. These 3 main loops seem to be good. We also want good consistent levels between all of them. No one main loop will be larger or louder or softer than the others. These three look good. These three look short. They're either at extremely high BPM or they might only be 4 bars long, depending on what it is. And these look like they are set up to loop. The intros need to consistently transition into the main loop, so we want to watch out for any gaps at the end. Those look pretty good. This looks good. There's a little bit of gap in the front of this one, but that probably won't cause too much of an issue. These 3 intro cues are a little bit low, but if they don't look low compared to the main loop, so they're probably all right. You generally, when you're bouncing everything out, want to at least, well, for our particular project, since you have control over both the music and the sound effects, since you are creating both of those, you do ultimately have control over the final mix. You are generally better off to bounce out loud or louder, obviously not clipping, not overloading, but headed up towards 0 on a strong level. You don't want anything where you bounce out and the waveforms are really tiny. And also put your music and sound effect, like this week, while you're building your sound effects, just take the music files and import them into the same session and make sure you're listening to everything together so that it doesn't become really obvious in the game and it's later on in the process and you have less time to go back and fix everything. These 3 intros look good, although it looks like these might be metronome in there. Can't see it there, but I don't know. It's either hi-hats or metronomes. We'll see. And then 3 endings over here. Again, the endings need to end. These 3 look like they resolve to an ending fine. These 3 look like they're good. If not, you mean to make sure that they fade all the way to silence. But musically they look good. These 3 look like they get cut off. These look like they do fade to silence. These 2, this one looks like it gets cut off. This one looks like it almost gets cut off. This one might be okay. So, and this always, this goes the same for any other composition that you do, anything that you bounce out. You should probably re-import them back in to a session and actually look at the wave files, much in the same way that we're doing here. All right, so none of that means anything without actually listening to it. That's just kind of trying to read the waveforms. So let's actually go through and pay attention to everything. We'll start up the first one here. One thing that I did notice with this first submission here, let me go back to the actual files. All of these files were submitted as MP3s. This is going to cause an issue in the game. The game's probably not even going to work with MP3 files. It won't read them. They do all need to be converted to WAV files, like bounced out again. Don't just change the don't just change the .mp3. Bounce them out again, get actual WAV files at 16-bit 44.1 so that they are formatted correctly to work in the game. Also, MP3 files will not loop properly because of the way they are set up. They are not set up to loop. That will also cause issue in a game. All right, but they should play back just fine in the DAW. So let's check this out. First submission here. little gaps as it jumps around from one to the next. Like that's a little better. This one, yeah, transitioned over. So watch the bounces. Make sure you create seamless loops. Watch out for the dissonance in the cues. So this one's fine. It has very little, no, it has no dissonance in it. This one has, with the chord, that second chord, that's a bit dissonant overall. Won't necessarily fit. Then I am missing like a melody. This is a chord progression, also a bass line. I basically have drums and a synth, I think. So it needs a lot more instrumentation. Kick, basically kick, snare, and a synth. So bass line, harmonic progression. This is the only one that has a melodic lead kind of feel to it. But also watch the repetition in the first half, the second half of the cues. So you just want to use that melodic lead to develop over the course of the entire 8 bars and then be different from one to the next, because these are going to constantly be looping around. So yeah, this is just a single synth. There's a different synth. Is that in here? Okay, maybe there's more than one synth, but they're doing the exact same thing. Now that I hear this, I couldn't actually hear that synth layer before because it feels like the same MIDI. So all of the intros and endings need drums so that it feels consistent to what's going on over here. Because the drums only exist in the main loops, they need to exist also in the intros and endings. So you have the bass line here, so you need drums. You have the foundation for everything. So you need bass line, and you need a strong melodic lead to develop. You need to add all of those instruments into the intros and endings too, so they meet up a little bit more with what's going on in the main loops. Make sure everything's bounced out as waves, and make sure everything loops properly. All right, next one here. Give this one a try. I think I'm ready to go. Great energy for the project. I think it fits very well for the game. There's some good change from one to the next. The drums provide kind of a solid rhythmic foundation for the rest of the music. One thing I'm listening for is repetition in the first half and second half. So I think there's a good solid melody in the first one here. Alright, and then you got some, I like the portamento and the slide here, but the second half feels quite similar. feels quite similar to what is going on in the first half. So maybe a little bit more variation in main loop 2. And the melodic lead line is less identifiable in the third cue because it follows the chord progressions more, the chord changes more closely. Where this one has a bit of a separation, it kind of pulls away and finds its own movement against the chord progression. But this third one here gets lost. It's probably because it follows it very rhythmically and hits a lot of the same chord tones. So maybe a little bit more variation in the second half of 2, a little bit more of the identifiable lead in the third one, but overall I think they fit very well. Let's do 3 intros. All right, those do very well. They build up in intensity. They kind of subdivide the beat. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it just kind of builds up, also moves in an upward direction. The drums build up, so I think the intros work well. And it looks like all 3 of these endings are going to end properly. So compositionally, they work very well, but just watch out for any of the instrument decay at the end of the file. So see, that cymbal crash just gets cut off. Same there. Yeah, so just extend the bounce a little bit longer. The music ends in 2 bars, but if you need a little bit extra room for cymbal crash and decay like that, just go ahead and bounce those out again. So, nice work overall. I think the intros are fine. Just fix up the very end of the endings and just some tweaks to, I think, the second and third main loop there. So, nice work. Doing good stuff so far. Let's go ahead and jump here. All right, try the next one. There's too much difference in the instrumentation from one loop to the next. This first one doesn't even feel like it has drums. There might be drums buried way back in the mix, but they're really hard to hear. Feels like something's like a snare, but so this one gets a little bit jumbled with all the different synth layers. This one's a little bit clearer. Watch the repetition of basically you repeat the same idea in the first half and just switch it to another half. Also go for more of a straight ahead drum rhythm to keep the pace going. There's too much change from one to the next. So just maintain the drums on the 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3. To just maintain that steady rhythm. You can even go double time. Maybe a little fast. So more consistency in the instrumentation and a more steady drum rhythm. This is where the difference in instrumentation is going to cause the most issue. Although they seem to be doing the exact same thing. Yeah, so it sounds like it's basically the same MIDI, but you've just copied it to different instruments. And then when intro 1 goes into main loop 2 and then into ending 3, they're going to sound all different from each other. You don't have any drums in the endings. And they're doing, again, it sounds like the same MIDI that's just copied the 3 different instruments, bounced 3 times. They need to be faded, or they need to reach silence. So make sure they don't get cut off by the end of the file. All right, so the strongest, the biggest issue here is the fact that there are 3 different sounding groups of instruments for each one of the cues. So intro 1 into main loop 1 into ending 1 probably sounds all right, but as soon as you combine them together in any other order, the strong change in instrumentation will be distracting. Pick one group of instruments and keep the same instruments, but now then change the progression and the composition. You almost have it backwards where you're changing all the instruments all over the place and keeping the same MIDI on all of them. So you want to have one group of instruments and change the melodic lead line, change the progression, change the drum pattern. That will create more consistency as you are moving through the different pieces of music. All right. So we'll jump into the next one here. All right, so it certainly is at a fast tempo overall. They do count out to 8 bars. 1, 2, 3. I'm not counting fast enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3, 4. Yep. So they do count out, but at that pace, they almost might sound better twice as long, where you develop out the melody a little bit more. But what's going on in there works very well. So I think at this pace and with a strong melodic lead, you can get away with more consistent drums all the way across. It's the same pattern all the way through, but if you had too much change, it would get very distracting, and it would be very obvious as to which cue you're in. I would say at this pace and this short, this will probably get pretty repetitive, so that might be a case for creating them twice as long. Let's try 3 intros. Those sound, because they go back to the tonic, they almost sound like endings. Let's hit the 3 endings. So these work as endings, but these intros are, maybe you shouldn't hit the tonic there. You should probably be on the 4 chord or the 5 chord, maybe a dominant 7 to kind of hang there, maybe even a suspension to hang before you drop in on what are probably the tonic of each one of these. Okay, they all start at the same chord. And so when going from that chord to the same chord, since you end on these just sound very, the intros sound very, they complete, like they feel like they complete the idea. And then you even have a little gap, and then it goes back to the same, it starts back on the same chord. So I would probably find 3 different chords or whatever, 3 different places for these intros to go right before they drop into the main loops. Let me listen to these endings again. Actually, let me space them out. Yeah, they get cut off just a little bit at the end. So whether you just do a little artificial fade on it or you extend it out a little bit longer in the bounce, just to make sure to capture all that little bit at the end. All right, so nice work. Overall, I would increase the level of the bounce too. You just have a lot of room to go. That will help the intensity overall. And think about extending the length of these cues out to prevent repetition since you're at that pace. Think about the ending these with the tonic or avoiding ending these with the tonic and extending those out just a little bit. All right, let's do one more. And we'll try main loop. Let's not do it that loud. Okay, I think I'm hearing the click in the back. Sounds like 2 of them are bounced together. Wait, what? I'm not clicking, am I? What's going on here? No, I'm not clicking because... Alright, so these... Anyway, so check 14 and 15. The click is off. I don't know if I think in 14, two of them are playing at two things are playing at the same time. 15, just the click feels off. So number one, don't have a click. Well, at least in the bounce. And yeah, double check 14 and 15. I'm going to listen to 13 because I can get an overall sense. I mean, what you're doing in there is fine. So, yeah, I think you have a melodic lead. You got a nice progression and drum pattern and all that. Maybe a little bit more change from one to the next so that there's a little bit more variation. I don't know if it's because how it was bounced, but yeah, double check those elements. Let's go into these intros. Okay, so I think that the metronome, but I think the second bar needs more build. With each one of these, you hit some chords, you go da 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 da, and you kind of hold it. When during that second bar is maybe when it should build up some more. Just a little bit more build. You kind of pause it there in the second bar of those 2-bar intros. And then 3 endings. So I think the third ending works out the best because you hit the tonic and you kind of sustain it. Just make sure everything does end and reach silence. And you just hold the last chord, and I think because the drums are still going and the metronome's still going. So you can just kind of base it on all 3 of these, probably end on beat 1 of bar 2. Well, this one doesn't have much going in the first half, but just hit that last chord. Hit the tonic there. Hit the tonic chord just to end everything out, kind of like you do here. And drums are out. Fades out, reaches silence, all of that stuff. One thing I wanted to pay attention to. Okay, just making sure that the lead synth line that I hear here is present in all of the intros and endings. All right, so hopefully that helped. Give you some good direction on your composition. We heard all sorts of different approaches. One of the best things I think is that you get to hear me talk about other people's projects. You get to hear all sorts of different ideas. The more people we have set up on this, the more people that we have submitting, the more variations we have overall, and you get to see all the good and the bad. We can find some good stuff and point it out and say, hey, pay attention to this. This was working. Then we find some of the bad stuff and we warn, okay, everybody try to avoid this kind of thing. And you will hear and see stuff that you probably would never have ever considered, both good and bad, and things to work towards. So I think everybody has a solid foundation to work from. If anything, it's just going farther and adding more layers and filling out the mix. You certainly the challenge here, and I would probably bet that you encountered this, is like you can come up with a musical theme. You can come up and bring in all the instrumentation and get everything set up. You play the game and you get a feel for how it works. Um, and it's okay to write one of these, maybe intros, main loops, and endings, but then to write, and maybe even a second one, but often to write all three of them, intros, main loops, and endings, becomes a challenge to get them all to feel like one cohesive composition. So and most of the things that we were discussing were the elements that make it a game. The fact that it's three groups of intros, main loops, and endings, the fact that they can rearrange, looping files, how they are going to begin and end and transition from one to the next, making sure it's consistent across all three of them, but in the instrumentation, but still having change and variation in the melody. A lot of the things that we were discussing are the challenges. That's like your first composition, working in this kind of interactive environment. So that's all the stuff. If we were talking more about your composition, we're talking about your choice of instruments and your melody and all of that, then that's a better place to be overall, because that is the stuff that's a bit more subjective. That's the stuff that's a bit more specific to a project or a client. If we were talking about how the files were named, how they were formatted, whether they looped or not, maybe whether the endings actually reached silence, the overall mix, too loud, too soft, those are the more general kind of cut and dry stuff that should be will be true of any sort of project. So you got to get the basics of that down first, just to make sure it all works in the game, and then we have more room to talk about your composition, your choice of instrumentation, the more subjective compositional aspects of it. So hopefully this encourages everybody to submit for next round. So we have lots of different projects to talk about, and we will now turn it over to our archive with a discussion of the week 3 assignments. No, sorry, week 2 assignments. All right, thank you very much. For week 2, again, I hope you have taken the opportunity to check out the assignments. Do I still have FSO open? I think I closed that. Let me get FSO back up and running. Hello? Thank you. Oh, goodness. Come on. So here we are. I don't want to be there. I want to be here. Week 2. All right. So here in week 2, you have the sound design for this 2D platformer assignment. You will do a video capture of that assignment. Notice that this is unweighted. But this is not an optional assignment. You just don't turn it in here. It's graded in this composition description. So I will be talking about these 3 assignments here. Again, we have an optional feedback and peer review. This is where you're going to turn in your video links for next round's peer review. And then we have a link to the virtual class and some suggested reading and viewing. I'm going to open up this because I'm going to need this in a little bit. But let me switch back. Here. Okay. So, sound design. By the end of this week, as I mentioned, you will have a completed version of this 2D platformer game project with all of the music and sound effects working. So after you either watch the video, watch the archive, or when you get your grades and feedback and all that back, you can take all of those suggestions and critiques and revise the music, put the revised music in the game, and you'll add in these sound effects. And we'll talk about actually putting all the music and sound effects into the game, and then how you test everything out. So, the sound design for this game is pretty ridiculous, as you've already heard while playing the game. There are sound effects, there are sound effects, there are lines of dialogue, and most of the sounds that you can do, or most of the sounds for this game you can do with a microphone and your voice. So, when you download this assignment, you get this PDF that looks like this. Maybe. There it goes. So, and it's a description of how you would set up the session, and I'm going to go through all of this and mostly just covering what I will discuss here. Sourcing the sound effects. I think you should be familiar with weststarmusic.com, which is a website that you can go download sound effects from. Actually, I know that in your looping assignment from last week, you downloaded some music loops from Weststar Music. Well, they also have a sound effects component of their website, and it's got tons of sound effects ready to go. There's also another website called freesound.org, which is known as a crowdsourced sound effects website. There are a whole lot of sounds on freesound.org, but there are also a whole lot of very bad sounds on freesound.org because the general public can just post up all sorts of different stuff. So you have to kind of hunt around for some good quality sounds on there. They have different versions of like uses and restrictions. They're all free, and they're all certainly free purposed for our educational project here, but certainly something to watch out for. Here in the chat, so glad for the Weststar deal because I use it for extracurricular projects too. Absolutely. It's a good resource overall. And in this document, for this game, you will create a total of 18 sound effects. So there is a listing of all of the sound effects with a short description and screenshots so you know what it refers to. More than likely, you play the game enough, you can get an idea of what sound effects are what, and just generally what these are referring to. I'm going to scroll past all of this because the main thing I want to get to is this sound effects asset list. So, here are all of the sound effects that you will be creating for the game. A total of 18 sound effects. Everything is going to be 16-bit, 44:1 bit depth and sample rate, and stereo files. And I suggest that when you start out this project, you go get the original sound effects in the game and import them into Logic as a reference while you're building your own sound effects. So, right above the asset list here, there is a paragraph that says putting your sound effects into the game. And hopefully, I think there's a paragraph very similar to this about how to get your music into the game. And hopefully you took the opportunity to test out your music in the game. But if you haven't yet, now's the time to do it. And this description will show you exactly how to do that. And really what we're looking for is this right here. So what I'm going to do now is go find the original sound effects in the game and show you how this works. So here is a copy of the game itself, 2D platformer. And to test out your music, to get all the sound effects, really it's just a folder inside of the game. So I'm going to right click on this and choose Show Package Contents. And that's going to pop up a folder rightly named Contents. I go into Contents, I go into Data, and then I go into Streaming Assets, and I go to Music and Sound Effects. Right? Your music folder will be blank because that's your job, is to create music and put it in here. You're ultimately going to have your 9 WAV files in here. And here are the 18 original sound effects for the game. And again, I do not expect you to remember how to get there, but you can just navigate, like I said, Contents, Data, Streaming Assets, and Sound Effects to find all of the sound effects and put your own in there. Sorry, I got lost. Here. Okay, so these are all the sound effects. I would suggest that you take all of these and you drop them into a new Logic session for your sound design. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to create a new session. Sure, we're done. Close. And we're going to take, I guess I need a track there. I'm going to take all of these sound effects and I'm just going to drop them on this track. I'm going to place all files on one track so they just kind of all line up. All of the original sounds are in crazy different formats. So you can just hit convert file and it'll convert them all to 44.1, which is probably what your session is at. Here in the chat, I created 18 tracks and named them accordingly. I always do things the hard way. Well, that certainly works also. So I brought them in on the track, and you're probably going to spend some time just kind of separating these out, just so you have a little bit of room to work. And I'm not going to do that. Won't bore you with me just dragging out some files. But just to kind of show you what I'm talking about here, you'll space these out a little bit and then create some blank tracks below. And these are going to be your layers that you're going to build on. So this will be originals. And these will just be your edit tracks or whatever, your build tracks. So you can use the original sound effects as a reference. Now, of course, when you bounce everything, you're going to mute this track because you do not want the original sound effects in your sound effects. They're there as a guide and as a reference, but they're not going to be bounced into your files. But once they're there, you can look at the shape of the waveform. Obviously, you can listen to them, how long they are, how loud they are, what they sound like, what layers you might need, just as much information as you can pull from the actual sound files. And then I'm going to completely cheat here and just, oops, not do that. That's too much cheating. So let's say I labored a whole lot and I made my own wave files. And of course, you're not just going to copy these over and over again, but just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, let's say I imported 4 layers of this bomb explosion. And I'd mute out the original one, whatever, 3 layers of my bomb explosion. And then I would bounce these, and I could just go through, build them one by one, and just bounce them as I go. So hopefully that gives you like a template to work from. Let's go ahead and actually listen to these sounds. so we know what we're talking about here. Give you some ideas. But let me make sure that we can all hear this. Hold on. Actually, I think that's going to work. I don't know how loud these are going to be, so I apologize ahead of time if they're ridiculously loud. In fact, I've got to have control. Hold on. Let me think. What am I doing? Oh, I know what I'm doing. Sorry. The hardest thing to do in this whole thing is get a volume on my, just my, whatever, spacebar preview. All right, let's see. Output. I think this is what. I think this will do it. Oh boy, computer. Come on. You can already see my videos kind of sketching out. Hold on. Well, things look all right. What's going on here? Sorry, I'm just in my audio video setup and I can't. Maybe I don't have that. Let's go here. How about this? Check, 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 check. Let's see. This may turn things down, but it might not either. All right. So here's bomb boom. This is when the bomb explodes in the game. Hello. Okay, that is a ridiculously loud and long boom overall. I don't know that yours needs to be that long, but that's the one that they chose. So there's your bomb explosion. Here is bomb fuse. This is when you, okay, so the bombs, you can right click in the game and drop bombs, the little parachutes that come down. You can pick those up. When you drop them, it does not immediately blow up. It gives you about a second to get away from them, and it plays this fuse sound. That one right there. I think I can turn it back up now. And if you've ever played Splinter Cell, that's the same sound as when they flip down the visor when it goes into night vision. It's also in the logo to Modern Warfare 3. It's a very popular sound. Bomb pickup. That's a very arcade-like sound. It's very what's the word I'm looking for? It's not real. It's not realistic at all. It's very synthetic. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. What it doesn't sound like is you picking up anything. So it can be very open to interpretation. Bomb set down.
Bombs away.
All right, it says bombs away. Like I said, you can do a lot of this with your voice. So you do not have to say exactly what they say. You don't have to say it in a British accent. You can just pull the exact same line. You can record it the same way if you'd like. But you can also have fun with it and make up your own lines, make up your own lines of dialogue. Please keep it safe and family friendly. But other than that, enjoy and have fun with it. So there's bombs set down. There's enemy death, 1, 2, and 3. This is when the enemies die and they get hurt. Here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. All right. So you open up the microphone and you go, boo, bah. And you get some enemy death sounds. Here's a sound effect, gunshot. This will be from Westar or something. All right. It's a gunshot. Actually, it's named gunshot. In the game, it's more like a bazooka that he has. It's certainly not a gun. And it's like a rocket launch. You should not have a rocket launch sound. You should not have something that goes and like blasts off or anything, because that's going to be really a long, long sound. That sound, this gunshot sound, is very short. So you can hit the button very, very quickly. Somebody's going to spam the button, go, pop, 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 and you want that gunshot to be happening very quickly. Here's the health pickup. It's just another arcade kind of sound. Kind of synthetic overall. Here in the chat, is there a max minimum number of sound effects we should, could, or should use in one asset? Number of layers? No, not really. There's not a minimum. You should probably have more than one. I mean, if you just pull one sound, that's not really sound design, but yeah, a couple of layers for the sounds. Do we keep the same naming format? Absolutely. The game is just not going to work if things aren't named correctly, if they're sample rate, the bit depth. The games do amazing things, but they're really kind of stupid overall. They only know what to do, exactly what you told them to do. So, yeah, formatting is definitely that way. Here's jump, 1, 2, and 3.
Huh. Huh. Huh.
All right. Notice those are the jump up sounds. So they are not landing. Every once in a while I'll get feet or shuffling somehow. So those are the jumps up. Here's ouch, 1, 2, and 3 when your character gets hit.
Oh. Ow. Ow.
So you just, again, open up the microphone. Also in the chat, I just try to imagine that if a bean was talking, what would it sound like? Exactly. I've heard all sorts of fun processing. I guess I know why they gave him a British accent, because it's set in London. But conceptually, it's just ridiculous. Taunt.
Keep it classy. Bring it on. I say, old bean. Bring it on.
Oops.
Keep it classy.
So keep it classy. Bring it on. I say, old bean. You don't have to say those. You could use the exact same lines. You can make it up, have fun, keep it all clean and safe, but enjoy. So again, most of these sound effects, these are all voices. This is a sound effect. This is a sound effect. Voice, 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 sound effect, sound effect, sound effect. So open up your microphone, have fun recording some of the lines, edit it all down, and test it out in the game. Again, let me just do this. Remember, we were on 2D platformer here. We did show package contents. We went into contents. We went and did data, into data, and did streaming assets. And that's where you're going to find music and sound effects. Steal all the original sounds, put them in your own session, use them as reference, but don't bounce them into the files. Then replace all of these sounds. Put your sound effects here, put your music here, test it all out, and it should work. So that is the sound design aspect. For the game capture, again, when you download this assignment, you get 2 PDFs. This one is more just overview of the assignment and how to submit it. Come on. There it goes. But probably more useful to the actual assignment itself is the game capture workflow. This PDF goes through the steps of how to set everything up to do a video capture. So, by the end of this, you will have composed the music, put the music in the game, tested it out, maybe made some revisions to the music, put the revised music in, put your sound effects in, test everything out, make sure it all works. Then you're going to do a video capture. You're going to use QuickTime and a program called Soundflower to record the video and the audio internal in your machine. The game's 2D platformer is a fully working Mac game, but there's still some limitations. Not everybody is going to want to download some random application. Like if you put it in a portfolio or put it on your website, post up the zip file somewhere, not everybody wants to download the file and play it. Not everybody has a Mac to download and play it. Not everybody has a computer maybe powerful enough to play it, although that's probably not an issue too much with these games. But there's no guarantee that in a year or 2 or 5 or 10 years from now that the computer or the operating system or whatever is going to play the game, because especially on Mac and Apple software and all that, it keeps moving forward. Like operating systems move forward and things get out of date. So, but a video capture is always going to stay relevant. You can post it up, add it to your portfolio, add it to your website. People have no issue with clicking on a video and watching your work. Then once they have an idea of what's going on, then they can download the game and check it out. So video capture is going to show your music and sound effects working in the game. You're going to install a program called Loopback. Loopback is a free application. Actually, no, that's not true. It's a $99 application, but you don't want the $99 version. You don't need it. You want the free version. The limit is it starts turning on white noise after 15 minutes. So if that happens, then you just turn it off and turn it back on again, and you get 15 more minutes. So if it starts spitting out white noise at you, then that's what's going on. So you just need the free version, and it allows you to capture audio inside of your computer. QuickTime, more than likely you've used QuickTime to do a screen capture or video capture at some point in some previous assignment overall. But QuickTime doesn't allow you to capture stuff inside of your computer for reasons, probably piracy reasons. Apple does not want you to be able to capture things directly like iTunes or the internet or whatever. And so, but that's not what we want. We made our music. We want to capture our music into video. We have to use a program like Loopback. So, so the instructions will take you through the process to get it set up. Ultimately, when you do a video capture, like I have QuickTime going here. When you do a screen recording, probably have done this before, pops up, and you can actually set it to be Loopback. Loopback pops up as an audio interface, and it allows you to go out, take an audio out of your game into QuickTime. So the most difficult aspect of this assignment is getting it all set up, getting QuickTime and Loopback to work together, which really isn't all that difficult, but will cause problems if it's not set up. So go through all the process or the steps listed here in getting QuickTime set up along with the video capture. Please double and triple check your video. Watch your video after you're done to make sure the audio captured. More than likely the video is going to capture fine, but the audio, you have to make sure it's the correct audio. If it's captured inside of your computer, it's going to be a flawless version of your music and the sound effects. But if it's incorrectly set up, a lot of times it'll capture your microphone. And so I just hear people just like breathing in the background. I don't hear any music. I just hear like keys typing, like click, 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 or I hear a dog barking in the background, or somebody washing dishes, or your family running around, or whatever. So watch out for that. And if that's the case, I just kind of assumed you never watched your video, or else it would be obvious that something's happening in the background. So if they're silent or if it's captured from the microphone, that will cause an issue. You're going to want to use loopback to capture everything internally. If you've ever used Soundflower, which is also common on Macs, you can use that. If you have Soundflower, you know how it works. It's pretty much the same thing. The only problem is Soundflower is getting kind of dated overall, and so we've had to switch over to loopback. So instructions talk about getting everything set up. The videos, once you record everything, you can record either in windowed or full screen. In these options in the beginning, you want the videos to be as professional as possible. So you might want to clean off your desktop or just capture the window itself. If the game is running too slowly, or the video capture, I don't mind if the video is kind of slow. Like if it doesn't capture completely smoothly, as long as the audio isn't messed up. That's the main thing we're listening for. Demonstrate the game. The content of the video, I leave more up to you. I'm not going to count every single music file or every single sound effect because I know that ultimately you don't have control over it. Like 8 of the 9 files are going to play, but for some reason that third intro just never triggers. And that's perfectly fine because, again, you don't have control over that. I'm more interested in the video and the capture. The audio is there, the game is there, your music and sound effects are there. What you actually show off in the video is up to you because it's ultimately your portfolio, your demo video. So the videos need to only be, I think the instructions say 60 seconds. Should be no longer than 60 seconds. I think I've actually kind of extend that on to 90 seconds. 2D platformer is no big issue, but Angry Bots, our second game, it gets kind of hard to demonstrate it in just a minute. So 60 seconds, 90 seconds, somewhere in there should be just fine. And then, yeah, just try to demo everything you can. Don't make the video of you just playing the game. Don't just play the game. Show off all the sounds. Meaning, like, sometimes I'll never hear an ending because they just won't die. They'll just keep playing. Like, I'm good. I'm going to play all the way through this. Which means I never hear all of your music in the video. So go through all the steps. Spawn, play, die, respawn a couple of times. Just even if you just run down to the bottom and just jump off the edge. So just so everything is there to show off. Exit the game, stop the screen recording, save the recording. This is all pretty straightforward. Please watch the video. This is like, if the only reason that people have issues with the assignment is because I'm guessing that they never watch the video that once they do it, or else they'd notice that there's just no audio or something. So, better screen recordings, clear off your desktop, hide your dock, just housekeeping kind of stuff. You can try high resolution. You can try low resolution if it kind of gets too jumpy. And then you're just going to post it up on YouTube so that embed the link in FSO. And there you go. So 2D platform game capture. Yes, we did that. Game capture. Yes. Okay. Now, you're not going to submit. So let me do this. This is your last assignment here. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Last assignment here is a composition description. This is a 10-question test that summarizes your composition. It kind of gives me all the information of the work that you did in your composition. It's formatted as a test on FSO. It's not really like a traditional test of questions that you have to study for or anything, because it's your composition. It's really just 10 things or tasks that you accomplished in this assignment. So first one is video capture. You're going to post up the YouTube link for the video capture. If there's no YouTube link, check that it is not private. If you go into incognito mode in your browser, you can look at your YouTube links like from like as if it was from anybody else. Meaning that if you are signed in on YouTube and you look at the link and it's private, it looks fine to you, but when you send it to me, I can't see it because it's private. So number one, no private YouTube links. And two, if you go into incognito mode or go on somebody else's computer and check the link, like email it to yourself or something, or I don't know, maybe check it on your phone. Maybe that'll work. But then you'll know that it's going to work. If you don't have a YouTube video or it doesn't work, then the whole assignment's 0, and I can't grade it until you fix the video. You'll provide a screenshot. You'll give me information what key is your composition in, what chord progression did you use, what is the tempo and time signature, so melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic information. List instrumentation. Tell me the different instruments on the different tracks, plus the sources of the instruments. Don't just tell me I used synth number 1. Tell me I used synth number 1 in Massive or in Reactor or I don't know, whatever. So list all the instrumentation and the sources of them, sample libraries, all that stuff, so I know what you're actually using. Then intro cues. Give me screenshots of all of your intros so I can respond and discuss those. Give me screenshots of all of your main loops. Give me screenshots of all of your ending cues. Transitions. Then create a screenshot of, and it says here, put intro 1 to main loop 2 into ending 3. Intro 2 to main loop 3, like just combine them all in different ways. And then it has you listen to them and comment to say, oh, hey, it does actually work. Or, oh no, I got to this point and I never actually listened to 1 to 2 to 3 and I realized that it doesn't work. So good things and bad things. You're not wrong for finding things that you need to work on. So it's just it's basically self-assessment of your composition. And then the mix. Give me a screenshot of your overall mix, a meter with peak and RMS levels. If you're not in Logic, you can use another meter, just as long as it's somewhat interpretable. And there you go. So mostly screenshots, some written information. Just make sure you're leaving time when the composition's done to get all the rest of this accomplished. So I think that is enough from me. So please let me know if you have any questions on any of these aspects, any of the assignments. Good work overall on the submissions for peer review from the original week 1 assignments. If you have any questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes after the class. We can discuss whatever you'd like. Other than that, we'll meet again on Thursday and go from there. Question here in the chat. When you were giving us feedback, are we required to make the adjustments according to your feedback? No, I mean, not particularly. I would appreciate it. Because honestly, I am grading the composition in the week 1. And then, I say actually, Michael Scicciano is actually managing the class. I'm just doing the live lectures. But the grading actually comes in, for the composition, comes in week 1. Overall, in the final product, it's more of the full thing, music and sound effects working all together with the video, the kind of the final project. So I just don't know if I'm going to have time, but you'll try. Excellent. So yeah, understand it. Actually, it's honestly more important to get working on the new stuff, get all that stuff accomplished, and then work it all together. And if you have the opportunity to change it, then great. All right. So Thank you very much, and yeah, we'll do it again on Thursday. Our Thursday sessions are open sessions. Come prepared with questions, and we can, or if you want to listen to anything else, we can do that too. Yeah. All right. So thanks a lot. Have a good evening, and I will see you again on Thursday.